Welcome to Plaid for Women TV, your go-to resource for the business of life. Whether the CEO of your home or your own business, women struggle with the same challenges. At Plaid TV, we discuss real-life issues affecting real women and offer solutions to help you achieve your goals, get connected, and be heard. Together, we will change the world. Let's do this. No mean girls allowed.
Hey, welcome everybody to Plaid for Women Television. I'm Siobhan Palmer. This is the final segment in our series on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. I'm delighted to welcome back Ms. Shani Barrax Moore. She's the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Tarrant County College. Shani, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, to wrap up this series, it's been a fascinating conversation. Let's talk about the tangible benefits of a diversity and inclusion effort.
I think that's a very good question because that's what everybody wants to know, sort of the what's in it for me or my organization, or what do I get out of this by having these critical conversations or these difficult conversations. And we talked a bit last time about cultural humility and that one of the foundations of that is critical self-reflection. But the reality is the more that you know about your own perspectives, then the more you know about how those perspectives relate to others. And so that's really, cultural humility is that lifelong journey. It's something that you're doing, that you're intentional about doing through the course of your life. And what you find when you lean into those conversations is that you're able to provide better products and services regardless of what area of business that you're in. That the more you know about yourself, the better you are able to relate to others. And so then you're also able to think about who's my end user.
Exactly.
And then how can I better relate to those folks who may be my end user? And so when you're talking about compositional diversity, having a good mix of folks, and we talked about this, gender, race, religion, age, sexual orientation, those sorts of things, that's who's out there. Right?
Exactly.
Regardless of whether you're a college or you're providing some sort of services. So when you have within your environment who's out there inside your environment, and you're thinking about how all of those perspectives relate to your own, regardless of what it is you're doing, you're going to have a better product or service.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, do you think the media, I mean, there's many things that impact a person's bias. I know the media has been a tremendous problem over the years. Why don't you speak to that in terms of from a female perspective?
A lot of the things that we talk about in some of the trainings that we do, Foundations of Diversity and Inclusion being one of those, which is sort of our 6-module training series where we really go in for 24 hours of this kind of conversation, but it's really meaningful. One of the things that we talk about, and we've mentioned this in previous segments, is bias. Bias and socialization. Again, all of us have biases, but we're really socialized to have those biases. So there's this cycle of socialization that starts as early as when we're 2 and 3. The messages that we're seeing on television, whether it's related to this is what a traditional family looks like, or this is what the standard of beauty is.
Exactly.
You're not supposed to be bigger than a size 4, which, I mean, then all of us are in trouble.
Absolutely.
If that's the case. But those messages that we see from the time we're young, and I've got 2 daughters, so I think about those messages as well, really influence, again, our perspectives.
And self-esteem and self-image, like you said.
Of course.
I just share a moment with you. I have a friend who's very involved in the Muslim community, and she and her husband, they actually developed a curriculum for young Muslim children, but she also had to design a doll for young Muslim girls with the hijab and the whole 9 yards because her daughters could not find dolls that reflected what they looked like as little girls in the retail marketplace.
And that's really important. Like, I remember, I'm a child of the 70s, and my mother is West Indian. She's from a Caribbean island where everybody was predominantly black or with a black mix.
Right.
And so when I was little and I was in private school, she had to color in all the people in my books brown, because I didn't see anyone brown all day.
Right.
And so that is part of socialization.
Absolutely.
And that becomes what you perceive as normal or not. And if you don't see anybody that looks like you, you start wondering. One of our participants in one of our trainings, she's deaf, and she said that she thought because she never saw any grown-up deaf people when she was a child, that you never got to adulthood, that all deaf people just die.
Wow.
at some point because, again, there are no representations in the media. So the media, you're absolutely right, is one
It's
of
a
those
huge-
institutions that help to socialize us as it relates to some of these, how we see some of these differences.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, on the personal side, what are the benefits of embracing diversity and inclusion in terms of personal awareness and personal, evolving as a person?
Well, I think there are a lot of different outcomes, and we've talked about this a lot, that a lot of it has to do with the awareness of those unconscious biases. And we've heard about biases a lot in the media now as it relates to some of the police situations and the police shootings that we've seen. But once you're aware of them, you can do something about them. So that's one positive outcome.
Right.
That's one positive outcome that relates to both the personal and the professional. The other thing, one thing that we all do every day is communicate. That is the one thing that we do every day, and I think that's why a lot of the work that we're doing here at Tarrant County College is related to language and communication. So one of the benefits is that you become empowered to correct offensive language. You become more cognizant of your own language, the language that you're using. Say, for example, how many of us say things like, "That's so lame"?
Yeah.
Would you say that to someone in a wheelchair?
Absolutely not. So it's perspective, isn't it? How it's applied and so forth.
Right. So that awareness helps you be more cognizant and aware of how sometimes we're using actual identifiers as negative adjectives. We give them a negative connotation. Another benefit is that we're aware of our relative privilege. One of the things that we talk about that's a very difficult topic for people to talk about, we talk about issues of privilege. Again, around all of those different identifiers we talked about: gender privilege, racial privilege, privilege related to sexual orientation, and heteronormative privilege, and those sort of things like that. The reality is, I don't care who we are, we're going to have more privilege relative to someone else.
Absolutely.
No matter who we are, we have more privilege relative to someone else. So we find that we can be change agents and allies for other people. Even though I am an African American woman, I have more privilege, say, for example, than someone who may have a disability or someone who may be a member of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender community.
Sure.
So I can be an advocate and an ally for those groups.
But once you get going, and it becomes more and more easier as you push the conversation forward.
Certainly,
It's critical.
and I think they have to be facilitated, safe space discussions first.
Yep.
Oftentimes when we try to have these discussions on our own, we might step in something. So that's the benefit of having these facilitated discussions. And then that also leads to really meaningful cross-cultural relationships. And it's something we can instill into our children. Many of the people that have gone through our trainings have said, I'm starting to use all this language with my kids, cultural humility and equity and things like that.
You get the babies when they're young.
You get the babies and you get them to realize it's okay to see difference. Just don't make judgments about the difference before you know someone.
Beautiful. Let me ask you, as a young professional woman, have there been any other prejudice or bias via your age or, any other elements besides race that you've encountered?
It's interesting that you mention age. I just turned 40, which I'm shouting it from the mountaintops that I just turned 40 because in my 20s and 30s, I really felt like I was really patronized by both men and women who would say, oh, you're just a baby. Oh, you don't really know anything. Or when you get older, which would say to me, but why can't I know what I'm talking about now?
Exactly.
And I think that's something as women that we really need to think about, that I personally have a lot of friends that are older than me because I want that wisdom. But I think it's also remembering...
It's reciprocal. Yeah.
That's exactly right, that just because you're older than me doesn't mean that there are things that I don't know at all.
Absolutely.
And there may be things that you can learn from me as a Generation Xer. So I think that's something that we need to think about, particularly as we think about mentoring and as women sort of bringing women up behind us, that we need to value the perspectives and experiences that really come from generational diversity as well.
This has been an amazing conversation. In a perfect world, in Nirvana for Shani Barrax Moore, with this program, what would you like to see ultimately achieved here at Tarrant County College and quite frankly beyond as you establish this kind of like a pilot type program?
One of the things that we talk about is that we're trying to facilitate culture change towards intentional inclusion. And so what does that mean? That means that we are comfortable talking about difference, seeing difference, acknowledging difference, inviting people to bring that difference into the classroom, into the workspace, because that's one of the things that we talk about the mission of the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion. It's creating an environment where everyone can be affirmed, and then therefore they can be fully engaged. Because if you're thinking more about hiding a part of yourself, say for example, if I'm Jewish, if I hear anti-Semitic comments, am I really going to want to share with someone that I'm Jewish? It's a hidden identifier.
Exactly.
You can't tell from looking at someone whether they're Jewish or not, or whether they're Muslim or not, which is one of the reasons why we have incorporated cultural expression as one of our identifiers. So that, for me, in a perfect world, we are creating an environment where everybody can be as different as they want to be. They can wear it on their sleeves, but people can say, wow, let's welcome that difference into our modus operandi and the way that we do business and in the way we're educating our students so that they're really getting the full benefit of an education in a diverse world.
Amazing woman. Do you have any favorite quote you'd like to leave us with?
One quote that I really love that's from Cornel West, there are two. He had said, "Justice is what love sounds like when it speaks in public."
Wow.
I think that love is one of the purest emotions. And then when you're able to really integrate, again, that interdependence that we talked about related to cultural humility, the more you know about the person sitting next to you, it's easier to understand them and get to know them and love them. And so justice happens when we care so much about the person sitting next to us, that we can really advocate for them. Another quote that I love is, "Do not follow where the path may lead. Instead, make your own path and leave a trail." And I think that's what we're trying to do here at Tarrant County College, is really create a path for other community colleges that really want to do this work and really facilitate intentional inclusion so that our students that we are educating here really can emerge really holistically and get a holistic education.
Yeah, it truly is a legacy project here.
Indeed.
Shani, thank you. This has been a fascinating conversation. I appreciate your time so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great to be here.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Siobhan Palmer with Plaid for Women Television. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching Plaid TV. See you next time.